Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding, the channel where you get to go birding without even leaving your couch. We're here at Ellanor C Park this morning in Northern Virginia, and for each of these episodes I'm going to try to have a target bird, and for this week it's going to be Field Sparrow. So we'll be looking for that pink bill, very plain face, very cute little bird, and we'll see if we can find it. They're pretty common here in this park during the fall, but during the winter they can be a bit hit and miss. This is my first walk here in the winter after many walks this past fall. I saw them a lot when I was birding in the fall, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll still be around. So we'll find out together. You're currently watching the narrated version of this episode where I'll tell you what all of the birds that we hear and see are. If you'd like to challenge your birding ability, try the challenge mode before watching this video so that way you can see if you can get them all yourself. We'll start our walk going over here towards the corner of the parking lot where we get our first bird right away, and it's a crow of some sort, but here there's fish crows and American crows, so without it calling it's hard to tell. But there it called, and we can now say for sure that that is an American crow flying away. We'll take a little bit more time here to see if we can't find this titmouse singing up in the tree. It's fun hearing birds sing in the winter, and titmice are one of the ones that will do it. There it is, up in the tree, maintaining its territory, I suppose, year-round. And then we'll continue on across the road here to the pond. I don't expect to find Field Sparrow by the pond, but it's always the place I start. A lot of times there's ducks here and geese and maybe even a heron, but today, being this first walk I've done here in the winter, I was surprised to see a thin layer of ice on the pond. It has been cold the last couple days, and so maybe overnight this froze over. I had been seeing a lot of mallards and Canada geese here on the pond every morning, but this morning it looks like it's just a white-throated sparrow on the edge. Not quite the same, but always a nice pickup. This pond is pretty interesting for more than just birds. Once we get over here to the deck and take a look around, you can see over in the corner by the boardwalk, there's what looks kind of like a mound of dirt, and that's actually a beaver lodge. I see beavers pretty regularly here first thing in the morning before the park gets too busy, but with a layer of ice in the pond and it being winter, I think we're probably not going to get lucky and see one today. We'll keep moving along the edge of the pond towards the backside. The backside of the pond tends to not be very productive for me, but I did see a barred owl there once, so it's always worth a try. I definitely get in my head sometimes if I see something there one time that it'll be there every time, even though time and time again it never is. That said, when I got to this corner, which usually isn't very productive, I did hear an eastern towhee, which sort of stopped me in my tracks. They're a bird that is easy to hear, but can be quite difficult to see. And then I saw a large bird kind of fly across about the right size, so I decided to check that out. But it turns out it was a northern cardinal, which is also very pretty. But as that northern cardinal flew back into the bushes, I noticed that there was a mixed flock coming across the road, which is a pretty common thing here in the winter, of a lot of different birds of different species all sort of getting together in the same flock. And that towhee was nice and loud, and it did actually end up popping up, which was a real treat. Definitely something I don't see every time I'm at the park, although I almost always hear one somewhere. This one's a male. You can see the really black head on it. The females are kind of a chocolate brown, and honestly I kind of like them a little bit better, but he's very pretty too. There's also yellow-rumped warblers that came in with this flock, which are very fun. This time of year most warblers are in Central or South America, but yellow-rumped warblers are pretty hardy, so they stick around. These winter mixed flocks are usually led by chickadees and titmice, and you can hear one of the titmice here. And then, sure enough, even though they're not calling, there's a chickadee there as well. At this point, a lot of the birds had started to move on, but there were still a couple things around. Bringing up the end of the flock were a group of blue jays, always a noisy but pretty bird that gave us a little bit better look, a little longer at least than the chickadee did. Distantly, a Carolina wren started calling, which is a bird like the towhee that's pretty easy to hear at this park, but can be very difficult to see as they stick to the thick brush. I get to see them a little more than the towhees, but they can be pretty tough, and that one sounded too far to really look for here. Now, with most of the birds past, I was about to leave, but then I saw a bird fly up into the tree. It took me a little while to figure out exactly where it was, and it was a nice treat of a downy woodpecker. And this downy woodpecker was eating some sort of berries, which is something I don't think I've ever seen them do before. They're often sort of pecking for insects, and I've even seen them eating seeds at feeders, but berries was a new one, at least for me. After that, downy woodpecker took a quick glance around, and the mixed flock had moved on, so I figured it was time for me to move on as well, to the back side of the pond where things tend to be a little bit more birdy. Although, having seen so many birds right here in this corner, it's hard to say. Maybe they had all moved over there, and the backside wouldn't be as productive. Right here is where I saw that barred owl, so I take a couple long looks down that little corridor, without any luck, of course. Ellanor Park, especially around this pond, tends to be pretty busy with a lot of walkers, but I was lucky to have it more or less to myself this morning. This morning was cold, one of the first frosts we've had, and often if I get here at dawn, it's a little less populated, so I think that was the key this morning. There's a couple snags here that often have woodpeckers, and the pileated woodpeckers actually sit there fairly often, so I took a long look through this area looking for woodpeckers in general, and looking a little farther back through the trees, I was able to spot one red-bellied woodpecker. This bird was a female. You can see the gray on the top of her head, and if you look really closely, you can almost see a little bit of red on her belly, which is a treat because that bird tends to not really show why it's named the way it is very well. A little further up, I did also spot another woodpecker, another downy woodpecker like before. We do also have hairy woodpeckers, which have a larger bill and a larger body size, but one field mark people don't know is this downy has dark bars on the white parts of the tail feathers, which is one way you can really reliably tell the two species apart. For a hairy woodpecker, those white tail feathers would be just completely white, no dark markings at all. I stopped here real quick to see these juncos, which seem to also be eating berries up in this tree. You don't really see juncos up in the tree very often, but this one seemed pretty happy up there. Interesting to see them not on the ground. With that, we've seen everything in this spot, so we'll keep going along the backside of the pond. Up here the trail forks, and if you keep going on this paved path, you'll cross a bridge and go to the north end of the park, which also can be quite good for birding, but we're going to take a right down this more gravel path along the edge of the forest and over to the field, where I think we'll have a better chance of seeing field sparrows. Along this edge are quite a few berries, especially in these tangles of what I think is wild grape, and today there's a northern cardinal up there munching away on those berries, enjoying what is left that is quickly being eaten by everything else. This can be a really good spot late in the fall for gray catbird too, but right now we're far too late for them, so I'm not expecting to see any of them today. Behind me I could hear a bunch of blue jays calling, and they ended up flying across into this tree, and I couldn't help myself but take a look. A lot of people don't really like blue jays because they think they're mean or aggressive, but I don't know, they're one of my favorite birds. They're blue, they're very pretty. Certainly when people come in from out of town that haven't birded the eastern part of the US before, it's one of the birds that they most want to see. Those and cardinals, actually. Both of those birds are birds I think here in the east we take for granted. They're definitely very pretty and very cool. There's more yellow rump warblers calling in here, which makes sense. I usually see them around these junipers. There's a lot of berries on the junipers and they seem to really like eating those. So I always check and almost can always find one. And sure enough, there is one in there, but it's pretty tough to see. Sometimes I find them in the trees sort of around the junipers as well, popping in and out, and sure enough, I was able to find one there that you can see at least a little bit better. But it'd be nice to have even just a little bit better view, and these two are pretty cooperative. They seem to have found some of those berries as well that the cardinal was enjoying earlier. If you're a warbler living in the winter in Virginia, you can't eat bugs like most warblers do most of the rest of the year, so berries are a pretty good option. In fact, it's not just yellow rump warblers that eat berries, pretty much all the warblers do. It's actually a pretty important part of their diet during fall migration. This blue jay also appears to be looking for food, probably looking for insects as it peels away bark, trying to find anything hidden underneath. I guess it could also be caching food, but it's hard to really say from down here, and that looks more like foraging behavior to me. I note here the calling white-throated sparrows. I wasn't really sure how often to put them on screen as calling, but if you know what they sound like, you'll hear them through pretty much the whole video. I take a second to stop here and look at these junipers. This is what the yellow-rumped warblers really like. It's surprising that they'll eat those little berries, but they do really love them. And throughout the fall and winter, I almost always find yellow-rumped warblers in that juniper eating those berries. So it's definitely a good source of food for them. We've crossed the road now. We'll head over to the field, which is where I think we'll actually find the field sparrows. But before that, I looked ahead and saw something in the tree, and it was an eastern gray squirrel. Not a bird this time, but still fun to see, although it didn't seem to like seeing us as it went behind the tree and hid. On the left, we have the historic Cable's Mill. This was built before the 1800s and was initially a grist and sawmill, but was later owned by David and Ellanor Lawrence, who the park is named after, and was used for a guest house where they entertained guests from Washington, D.C., including the Roosevelts. Now it's owned by the park and is a place that people can hold events. We'll start making our way down into the actual field where we can look for field sparrows and, quite frankly, a lot of other birds. I started by watching this little edge here. This is a spot that I often see field sparrows in the fall, and saw a lot of them this fall, but there wasn't anything there today at all, not even a white-throated sparrow, which should usually be pretty common right there. As I kept going, I saw a bird really distantly fly into the trees, which I didn't think was a field sparrow, but I figured it'd probably be worth checking out, and it's a downy woodpecker. This one's pretty far, so it's a little tough for identification, but you can still see a lot of the diminutive features of this species. We'll make our way down into this little alcove where this bluebird box is. This tends to be another spot that I very often find field sparrows, and so it's always worth a check. And here there was actually some sparrows moving around in the grass, and sure enough, there was one. You can see that little white eye ring, that very cute plain face, and the pink bill. That one didn't stick around very long for us to look, but with a little more effort I was able to see some more sparrows pop into the bushes, starting with a white-throat, but then there's also a field sparrow there as well. This one too flew out of my view before I really got a great look, so I kept looking. Over in the bushes I saw some movement, and that turned out to be a northern cardinal, but there was still a lot moving in the grass, so we'll stick with it a little bit longer, see what we can see, and see if we can get a little bit better look at the field sparrow. And there's another one popping up. Oh, that one's gone quick too. They are tricky to get a good long look at, but with a little effort, here are a couple birds that give us a little bit better look. They are maybe the cutest sparrow in all of North America, in my opinion, and luckily enough, it seemed like there was quite a few of them here in this little section of the field. You can see the sparrows even flying through the background. Many of those are white-throateds, but there were some field sparrows in there as well. Taking a second to see where they landed, get at least one more look. And there he is. Definitely a treat to see this little guy. And our target bird has been acquired. With that, I think we've covered this little spot pretty well, so we'll keep making our way around the loop of the field, stopping if we see anything moving. And there, a sparrow flew up. Maybe the field sparrows again. Let's check. Nope, a white-throated sparrow this time, and a really sharp one. They are a common bird, but I really do like seeing them as well. We'll keep moving, see if we can find anything else popping around in the grass. There's something that popped up, and another cardinal. He sure does look bright and pretty sitting there against that brown background. This fall I birded with a birder from out of the country that got their first northern cardinal, and I'm pretty high on them now. Just seeing that bird through their eyes gave me a new appreciation for them for sure. It's worth birding with people that maybe haven't seen as much as you have. Definitely gives you a new sense of wonder on birds that sometimes you've seen so many times you start to take for granted. A little more movement in the grass over here, and a tough look, but a dark-eyed junco looks like it's picking at the seeds on the tops of those grass stalks. Keep moving towards the corner of the field, which can also be another place that I see a lot of birds. As I was walking, I saw a bird fly across into the tree, and it's another one of the classic residents of this field, an eastern bluebird. This one being a female that's a little more gray blue than the bright blue of those males, but still very pretty. They're the reason the boxes have been put up in this field, but they're not alone in using them, as the tree swallows also do, and believe it or not, there's a pair of house wrens that every year use them as well. This red-bellied woodpecker was calling, and it ended up being one of the neatest things I saw on this entire walk. This red-bellied woodpecker had what looks like a peanut or perhaps some other kind of nut that it was stashing in this little slot in this branch. I've actually never seen red-bellied woodpeckers stash food, although it makes sense that they do. A lot of woodpeckers show this behavior, but for me this was a first. You can also see that this bird is a male, as that red extends from the nape all the way to the bill, unlike the female that had that gray patch on the forehead that we saw earlier. Doesn't seem like there's too much else going on in this corner, so I decided to keep walking. As I came along towards this path, I did hear a hermit thrush call off to my left, which is one of these birds that often likes these a little bit more densely vegetated areas. This looks like a pretty tough spot to see one, but I knelt down and gave it a shot. And lo and behold, sort of through the brush, I was able to see it, but it's a pretty tough look. But you can still see that red tail flicking, which other thrushes don't have. But it'd be nicer to get a better look at one. So look through again. It's hopping on the ground a little bit, but yeah, not too good. And that's the best look I got at it. But down the path, I did see a song sparrow that I missed, which is a nice bird that we haven't seen yet today. But the hermit thrush had moved off. Wasn't able to see it again, so I kept going along the path. We're now going to make our way to the top side of this field. This side tends to be a little less birdy than the other side, at least early in the morning. When I come later in the day, I get birds up here, but this time of day it tends to be pretty quiet. When the sun comes up, it hits the end of the field that we saw the sparrows first and warms it up. In the fall, I think it makes it so the bugs become a little more active over there, but in the winter, I think there's just more warmth on that side than this shadowy side on the top end. And I think the birds do react positively to that, looking for a little bit of warmth on these cooler winter mornings. So sure enough, as I walked across this top end of the field, there really wasn't anything at all. But there's still hope for this part of the trail, as this corner over here where we go into the woods does tend to have some birds. So we'll get up there and see if we can find anything. Sure enough, as I got up to these logs, I did see a little bit of movement down in the woods. So we'll check out, see what it is. It looks like a white-throated sparrow moving down in amongst the leaves there. That said, when I stopped, a winter wren called, which is another cool bird that I very rarely see, but this one seemed to be up in that tangle, which I felt meant I had a chance to see it, and sure enough, there it was, hopping around. I mean, for a winter wren, basically wide in the open. You can see it's sort of got a very round body, a really short tail compared to a house wren, which really wouldn't be around this time of year anyways. Definitely not a bird I expect to see when I go out, and sometimes I don't even hear them. So a really nice bird for the end of our walk. Can't help it, gotta take another look, especially since now he's even closer to the end of that tangle. You can hear him, that little chup 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 call. Really fun to see, and now honestly I think I wish I would have made winter wren my bird of the day, because that would have probably been a more impressive find than field sparrow, but I don't know, field sparrow is pretty cute too. Definitely a fun bird to get, and a bird that I didn't know was going to be out in the field, even though there were quite a few of them. I've gone back out to this park a couple times since filming this video, and I will say, it seems like this winter in Northern Virginia just has more birds around than normal. So maybe that's why field sparrows, which are oftentimes hit and miss, are actually pretty easy in the field this winter, and why a winter wren is a bird that is something that you can just see hopping around in a tangle instead of wishing you could see as it crawls like a little mouse through tangles on the edge of a creek bank, or simply calls from back in the forest like some of those Carolina wrens were doing that you don't get to see at all. So now we're back to the parking lot, so this is where we'll wrap things up. But before we go, I'll give you a little summary of our walk. Had 20 bird species, 1 species of mammal in a little less than a mile, and in an hour and 20 minutes of birding, and we saw our target bird. Here we'll take a look at our species list. There were a few birds that we only heard that we didn't actually see, and on this list they're indicated with that HO for heard only. It's been quite a nice bird walk this morning. I'm pretty pleased with the things that we saw. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Quite a nice list for starting off this virtual birding experience. And finally, we'll have our virtual birding life list, which we'll keep across all of the videos. And here at episode 1, obviously it's the same as our species list, as this is our first time out birding together. I hope to see you on the next one, and happy birding!